Good evening and welcome. It's Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. A very good evening.
It's Sunday the 23rd of June, 2013. Good evening. Now, one of our players is down. The OYM player is down. Hopefully you've seen it on the website. But you can click on the United We Strike player, and you can also click on the MSI player on the website and listen to the show. The company that run the Air player, the OYM player, their website is completely down. So we apologise for that, but we do have two other streams, one in Ireland and one over in the US. So we're still going out live on them. So anyway, good evening. How are you, Steve?
Fine, thanks.
Brilliant stuff. All right. You're a bit shocked there.
Yeah. Wait, you're changing it around again?
Just, change
so
is as good as the rest.
Right, so we'll say goodnight then, will we?
We'll say
and work backwards.
All right, well, let's catch up. Okay, our guest on the show tonight is a chap called Gary Heseltine. He's a retired detective constable, and he runs the Prufo website in the UK, got to do with UFOs and sightings and stuff like that. We're going to be getting Gary in a few minutes, but for the time being, we'll head over and we'll get the communication channels.
Yeah, okay, Mary, give us the communication channels there, will you?
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thanks very much, Mary. Yeah, if you want to give us a shout on the phone, it's 00353 before the phone number, and we also have, as Mary said there, the chat room as well, which is oymradio.com/live, or you can just head away to Open Your Mind, and in the top left hand corner, well, midway down the page, on the left hand corner, you'll see click here for a live chat, so you can click on that and you can join in, and you can also ask questions there to our special guest this evening. Hello.
Steve, okay, just a couple of things we're going to catch up with that happened during the week before we get Gary in. Now, boy oh boy, are these Anglo Irish tapes, upsetting a lot of people.
Can I press it? Can I?
Go on. Fantastic. They are upsetting a lot of people on what's been going on. And again, more tapes coming out. Senior manager John Bowen, Peter Fitzgerald. Now, we actually did, for people that went to our YouTube channel, I couldn't believe it. I did the audio tapes and I put them on our YouTube channel just so people could get the whole conversation rather than having it broken up. And that was done on Monday. And up to today, I think we've had up to about 29,000 hits, which is phenomenal for people to be listening. And I believe The Independent has brought out more tapes of things that are going on. And for people who've heard the tapes, I mean, it's pretty disgusting what went on and how the banks, Anglo-Irish, treated the Irish people and the bailout, and how they screwed us all, And obviously nobody's in jail. Surprise, surprise. But if you don't pay your TV licence, you could possibly be arrested. Or if somebody went in and robbed something in the shop, say a man went in to rob some bread to feed his kids who doesn't have any money, he'd be arrested and put in jail. I mean, I know we've said this before, but, it's just sickening. It's the hypocrisy of it all and what's going on. And, it's just, I don't know, they just really screwed the central bank. And your man who was in charge in the central bank, I mean, talk about asleep at the steering wheel. It's just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. But we had our two knights in armour, and I'll call them that, Claire Daly and David Norris. Now, if you haven't seen, we did send out the links for our registered users, but they're on YouTube. And if you look at Claire Daly and David Norris, giving Enda Kenny a right going over, fair play to the both of them for doing it. It had to be said, and they said everything that we wanted to say to Enda Kenny, bar a few of the swear words, I suppose. So well done to the both of them on that. And we'll just have to see what happens, but we're just going to have to wake these people up. I mean, I don't know. How do you wake these people up? I was going to say, apparently the government are building a new massive sand pit at the Ostrich Play Centre for the people in Ireland who cannot be bothered to do anything about what is going on. And you know who they are. They're more interested in EastEnders than the fact there is a man on hunger strike in Trim over the property charge. And yes, they probably will pay €50 to enter into this sand pit because they probably pay the property charge anyway. And they can pop along any day they want and stick their head in the sand. The facility will be there. And they'll obviously get a free t-shirt as well. And on the t-shirt they'll say, sure, what can you do?
Yeah, and while they have their head buried in the sand, it means their arse is going to be sticking up in the air so the government can keep giving it to them.
Exactly. You know, it's just, what can you say about the tapes? It's just getting beyond the joke now. I mean, talk about parasites in the government. I mean, they are. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, just if I can comment on that, what saddens me is the fact that as soon as those tapes were released into the wild, into public domain, everyone listened. Well, most people would have listened to them. Most people got angry, but being the fluoridated, non-fighting Irish, most people, as Alan said, just kind of bury their head in the sand and with the what can you do attitude. It's not that they don't know what to do. It's just that I think they've given up. I think we've been so heavily medicated with fluoridation, and well, not just that. I know there's more to it than that, but you know, with all the TV programs that are designed to captivate you and bring you into that world and keep you there and keep you away from reality. I mean, when you have TV shows called, reality TV, it's kind of, well, this is your new reality. This is reality. Don't mind what's going on out there, and governments, let them do what they do because you don't understand what they do. You're a mere mortal. You don't have the brain power to understand how to run a government or how to run a country. Let them do what they do best. You just stay here with us in the land of TV, and stick with your soap operas, and everything will be fine. Everything will be okay, But unfortunately, that's not the way it is. And I mean, people. Well, we were only talking about it earlier, but people are starting to wake up, and I'm going to be talking about that in a few minutes anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was just going to touch base on the Ed Snowden, the NSA whistleblower, talking, about what's going on. And the way I kind of seen it in my own kind of mind was that, he told basically the NSA, he told the teachers about the bully in the schoolyard of Obama and his cronies, and basically the bully got annoyed that he's being reported to the teachers, and basically, well done, Ed, and keep hiding. Or maybe they're talking about him going to Reykjavik in Iceland. There was an uncharted jet, a Russian jet landed in Reykjavik, and I think they're trying to find out whether that's Ed was on it or not. But for God's sake, Ed, don't come over to Ireland. They'll stitch you up and send you to Obama in a parcel. Enda Kenny and obviously all his parasites there are arse kisses to Obama. And I know it's a family show, so we have to be very careful. But you do get annoyed at these people and the people in government. I love the thing that Claire Daly said about the sycophantic. Very good. I mean, that's what they are. If they bending over backwards for Obama and supporting what they're doing to the rebels, terrorists, because they're a bit like the Black and Tans coming over here, and Syria are fighting back. So, well done, Ed, for doing that. And apparently there is another NSA whistleblower, which we haven't heard much of. So look out for the second NSA whistleblower who's out there talking about information as well. And it all seems to be coming out now, which is good. Plus the Vatican as well. You've probably heard about the Vatican and everything that went on with the Vatican at the moment. The rent boys and the prostitution rings and what have you. But we knew all this anyway. I mean, we all knew there was something going on there. But not to worry. Steve, can you talk about lovely lady Carol?
Yes, I'd be delighted to mention it again. And again. Yeah, as we mentioned there last week and the previous week, Dr. Carol Rosin, she's going to be running a Contact in the Desert at the Joshua Tree restaurant. It's a good name for a restaurant. It's the Joshua Tree Retreat Centre on the 9th to the 11th of August. That's a weekend of exploration into ancient aliens, human origins, UFO sightings, and the need to know. You can watch the meteor shower through the clear desert sky on that date, or those dates, and the event will be featuring George Newry from Coast to Coast, Dr. Stephen Greer, and there's going to be a live stream. Graham Hancock will be there, Jim Mars. Why do I keep thinking Jim Mars is a bass player? He's not a bass player, sure he's not. No, he's obviously not. Johnny Marr.
You're Johnny Marr.
Johnny Marr.
Johnny Marr, that's what you're thinking of.
Well, maybe Johnny Marr might go and play a few songs as well, but Jim Mars will definitely be there, and more. And for more information on that event, you can visit www.contactinthedesert.net. Alan.
Excellent stuff. So Karen is on the chat room. Hi Karen, and she's just letting us know, just a reminder, that there's going to be a big strike from July 4th to July 7th globally. Keep your money out of the system. Put it in your pocket. Use it for something else, or you support your local business, but don't give it to the corporate companies. So try and do what you can. Again, something that I've mentioned last week about shutting down the bank accounts and trying to survive outside the bank accounts. Difficult to do, but we're looking to try and do something about it. Because the banks are putting the charges back up over here in Ireland. So if we pull away from the banks and try and get away from them, then they won't have any business. Simple as that.
Well, it's difficult to do, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
As Marcus McKeown did say to us many months ago when he was here live with us in the studio, he did say that it is difficult to live outside of their system, but it's not impossible because Marcus has done it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's an he's my inspiration anyway.
Excellent. Well, how's your week, Steve?
Oh, don't get me started. Yeah, my week with all this stuff going on about the Anglo tapes. I mean, when I heard that first, you know what it's like where I work. I'm the tinfoil hat wearer in my place of employment. So when this thing came out about the tapes, and I started mentioning it to them in the office, and I said, "Have you heard the tapes?" And they said no. So I sent a link, and everyone had a, well, as far as I know, everybody had a listen anyway. But we definitely threw it around in the canteen. And there was a lot of what Alan said about the ostriches and the sandpit. There was the one or two people whose attitude was, sure, what can you do? It's annoying and it's angry, but sure, what can you do? You know, and I'm saying, well, there's plenty we can do, you know, but as Karen Quinn Tostado always says, don't buy, don't comply, and ask why. You know, you can remove your money from the system, and when we stop supporting their system, it has to fall. It's you know, it's a child could figure that one out. But yeah, you're welcome, Karen. And we kind of listened to the tapes, and there's another version of going around. I think it's broken up into 4 sections, but it's subtitled, so you can actually hear what's going on. And my interpretation was that these two guys were in up to their neck, and they were saying lots, but they weren't saying much. Really, there was lots of ums and ahs, and what do you think will happen? But the pièce de résistance was when the guy, one of the chaps said that he went into the financial services, and he said, okay, listen, we've got a problem, lads, and we need a bailout, we need help, we need 7. He meant 7 billion, and the other chap said to him, why did you say 7? He said, well, if I told them the full extent of the damage, he said they would have walked away from it. There's no way we could have got them invested. He said we would have needed in excess of 30 billion. But I said 7 just so they'd get interested and get a bit of skin in the game, is what he said. And your man said to him, where did you get the figure of 7? And I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's there on the tape. Your man said, I just pulled it out of my arse. I just pulled that figure, like out of thin air. He just made a figure of 7. So just to get them interested, enough to kind of, you know, so that the government would invest a few bob. And obviously after that, once they had an investment in the bailout, I mean, then obviously the government couldn't walk away at that stage because it invested 7 billion, and as we all know, it's just kept going up and up and up and up and up, and I don't think there's any end in sight. But still, after those tapes, I was filmed. I was talking to Alan there during the week, and I said they should be brought to trial, and you know, something needs to happen. It needs to be dealt with, and as Alan rightly pointed out to me, the case is tarnished now anyway because the tapes are out there. So I mean, how can they get a fair trial? What do you think? Can they get a fair trial now that this evidence is out there? That's
the rumour, you see. The rumour was that the guy who released him in the Independent was one of the people that were kind of on the inside. Yeah. And they said, well, if we release these tapes, we know there's going to be a lot of trouble, but it'll actually spoil any case that, any evidence. Well, actually, you know, we can talk to Gary about this because Gary is an ex-detective constable, so.
Yeah.
But, yeah, interesting.
It is. And I've got just 2 more things to mention very quickly. Vodafone. I don't know how many people have experienced this, but my daughter changed her phone provider, and she got a Vodafone SIM card. We were on Vodafone going through their phone menus last night for about 60 minutes, and I kid you not, there was menus for this, menus for that, and no matter what menu option we pressed, we could not get to speak to a human being. I mean, it was unreal. I'm not joking. It went on for about an hour, trying different menus. Could not get to speak to a real person. I fired them off an email, and I told them how dissatisfied we were with their service, their customer service, that all we wanted to do was speak to a human being to find out some information that wasn't contained within their menus. I asked them, could they please reply to me or ring me, and I gave them different contact numbers, and I asked them, could they ring us ASAP? That was about 7 o'clock yesterday evening, and they haven't rang yet. But anyway, she was actually onto them there this morning. She rang again, just tried on the off chance, but she didn't ring their Irish number. She rang as if you're ringing in from outside of Ireland. She dialed that number, and actually, believe it or not, she got through. So that's kind of sorted. But Vodafone, shame on you. Update your menu system. It's sometimes people just want to speak to another human being. They don't want to go through reams and reams of nonsensical menus. Anyway, TV license sheets. My father brought me down this clipping from the Evening Herald newspaper, or toilet paper, depends on what way you look at it. It's Monday, 24th of June, 2013, and on page 25 it says, inspectors to get bonus for nabbing TV license sheets. When you read through the thing, it basically tells you that there's a target of 1,005,000, I think it's 1,005,000 or whatever the hell it is, license sales is understood to have been set for this year. So they have a target to meet. They actually say that they have people out on the streets now. They're going to be knocking on doors, and basically if you haven't got a TV license, you will be prosecuted. And that's the crux of it. You will be prosecuted. However, what they fail to mention is that when the guy knocks on your door, if you don't recognise these people, well, you just say, I don't recognise you, and you close the door, end of story. So, you haven't really given any information. So, but they cleverly kind of skip or glaze over that piece. They also say that the TV license inspectors, they used to finish around 5:30, 6 o'clock of an evening. However, now they're being given they've been given extra time, so they can work up to 9 o'clock, and also on Saturdays and Sundays as well. Plus they'll have targets, and if they meet those targets of catching the TV license cheats, they will get a bonus. Now it also gives figures here. Where was it there? Just the end of the article says total receipts for TV licenses came to €215 million in 2012. That was down from 217.7 million in 2011 and 222.3 million in 2010. So my understanding is that people are starting to wake up and realising, austerity measures and all this carry on. People are obviously putting food on their table rather than paying for these nonsensical TV licenses. And as we mentioned a few weeks ago, could have been actually about a month or more ago, Mr. Pat Rabbitt, our communications minister, he has done away with the TV license as and from, I believe it was May, I think it was the end of May. We now have a broadcasting license, and it's even quoted here in the paper. I can't actually find it here. I'm speed reading, but basically what it says is that even if you don't own a TV, you are required to pay this new broadcasting license because, well, it's there if you want it, and if you don't have a TV, that's your problem. But they're also saying that, well, sure, you can receive TV broadcasts on your tablet, your laptop, your PC, and your mobile phone. So they're kind of bringing everything under the one umbrella. But again, what they're kind of missing out on is that this TV license, it's an act, it's not a law. And as we all know, an act has the force of law, but it is not a law. There is no law that says you must have a TV license. And that's basically it. They don't even send you out a bill, they send you out a notice. And we said previously, a notice in law is not a bill or an invoice. So yeah, listen, best of luck. My advice to anyone, which I will be doing anyway if anyone knocks on my door, will be, I'm sorry, I do not recognise you, and I'll be closing the door. And that comes will be returned to sender, because, as I said previously, return or not, I don't recognise you, I do not recognise you covers many areas. It means, like, I don't recognise you as in, you're not somebody who I know, and it also says I do not recognise you as in I don't recognise you or the company you work for. I don't have anything to do with that. And just close the door, and anything that comes in, return to sender. That's what I'll be doing. I've been returning their junk mail to sender for a long time anyway. There we go.
There we go.
How's your week?
How's my week? Well, would you believe I went down to the local hotel with my family. There was a bit of a treat going on there, and I bumped into a guy that looked exactly like you.
Yeah, it's funny because when we walked in, I said, "There's a guy who looks like Alan."
And there you go. It's a small town we live in, so what can we say? Okay, just a couple of things before we bring Gary in. Catherine Albrecht, the lady who promotes the dangers of RFID and all that kind of stuff, she's a co-founder of a website called startpage.com. Because of all the NSA issues and all the snooping and everything else, what they've decided to do is set up a website, like a search page, which actually uses Google, but they hide your cookies and hide your IP address, and basically there's no tracking involved with startpage.com. Well, this is what they're saying. And Catherine Albrecht is a co-founder. And basically what you do is you type in what you want, and Startpage forwards your search to Google, minus your details and cookies. They then, details all sign, basically, they will delete your information. You know, when you finish surfing, within a few hours or so, they will actually, they will delete your information. And it's actually run from the Netherlands, so it's outside the US jurisdiction. Okay, so if you want to have a look at that, it's called startpage.com. And, just for, you know, I mean, we're all allowed a bit of privacy, you know, and Google is one that was going to be giving information over to the NSA. So let's go and see if we can, you know, get away from their system and then stop using Google as much as we can.
Just to mention on that as well, Jim in the UK has beat me to it. There is another one called DuckDuckGo. That's also a search engine that offers the same as Startpage. But, I mean, it's about time this kind of start happening, because I don't want everything I search for on Google to be, you know, tracked and traced. And, you know, sometimes you might be just looking for how to build a nuclear bomb, and, you know, I don't want people knowing I'm looking for that information.
Or go to some kind of dating site for terrorists. I don't know. You know?
Dating site for terrorists. She blew me away. Okay, the next thing is just very quickly about Project Wormwood. We've talked about this before. Apparently this comet's supposed to be coming in, and a lot of astronomers are down in Australia watching what's happening there. They're pretty concerned about it. And some people are saying August, other people are saying November, and certain changes taking place. And, you know, there is a kind of thought process by some people that they're kicking the financial can down the road, because they know what's going to happen. So that's why they're not bothering doing anything, because when this happens, we won't need a financial system anyway. So that's a kind of a thought process by some people, but interesting nonetheless. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that. But as usual, like last year, remember we heard all about everything about Niraboo and all that kind of stuff. And of course, me and Steve took it with a pinch of salt and said, we'll see you next week. And of course, next week come along. So, but out of interest, we're just kind of mentioning it there, you know. Right, okay, without further ado, we're going to bring our guest on. Now, we had a little bit of Skype problems earlier on, before the show, while we're getting Gary on, so hopefully we won't have any Skype issues. Gary Heseltine is a retired police constable, and he runs the Prufo website. And basically, the Prufo website is all about sightings that people are probably, you know, I think in the military and the police definitely, that what they've seen, and obviously they report it back to Gary. So, obviously, loads of information, loads of sightings, but we'll get more information off Gary. He can tell us all about it. Good evening, Gary. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. You did lots of gabbling.
Oh, we did lots of gabbling. You know, me and Steve were Irish. That's what we do. We're good at gabbling, you know? Like two old women.
Exactly.
Well, Gary, good evening. Thanks for coming on there. Just very quickly, well, the thing we mentioned there, one of the news reports, was about if evidence come out regarding tape recordings of people doing things, and that comes out in the national press, which it did, does that affect the case of bringing them people to jail, or bringing to justice, I should say?
Well, you often get things like panorama exposés where they'll go undercover and set an MP up or something like that. So it can be used in evidence, but it can also be ruled inadmissible because it's been done without the permission of the person presumably getting taped. But in the end, that would be down to the Crown Prosecution Service, or in Ireland, whichever prosecution service you use, to determine whether it was admissible or not. But I mean, the bottom line is, I would say, if there's something clearly illegal that's in the public interest, then I think it would be admitted into a court of law.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to find out about that. Well, again, we brought you on, Gary, because I think an awful lot of people have been watching the citizens' disclosure in Washington that took part in May. Brilliant information, brilliant witnesses, and just the overall. I think it was over 4 days.
5 days.
5 days. Brilliant information that came out there. But before we get into that, because I think it's important that we're going to have a talk about that. Tell us about how you got involved in the Proof4 website and all this, because it's kind of strange for like a detective constable to be involved in UFO sightings and all this. So how did you get involved in all this?
I had a sighting when I was 15 years old. That kind of created my interest. Then in 1975, when that took place, there wasn't really a lot you could do. It was just pre the video era. So all you could do really was get second-hand books. So that's what I did. I got second-hand books on UFOs. I'd never had an interest prior to that. For 2 or 3 years, I was really interested. And then I kind of went away and had a life, got married, had kids, joined the Air Force, joined the police. And it was only into about 1995, by which time I was a police officer by 6 years service, when I came across a glossy magazine in W.H. Smith's at Leeds Railway Station, and it was called UFO Magazine, and it seemed to be very sensible. It was common sense. It talked about pilots, air traffic controllers, astronauts, cosmonauts, with credible reports, and I'm thinking, this is really interesting. It was then a bi-monthly publication. I followed it for a couple of years and also reacquainted myself with all the latest books. People like Tim Good's Above Top Secret, Beyond Top Secret, A Covert Agenda by Nick Redfern were excellent books. And at the end of that process, I kept feeling frustrated, basically, that the media was still ridiculing the subject. And it struck me as being wrong, because if a pilot chases a UFO and launches its missiles at a UFO, surely that's worthy of being on the 6 o'clock news, but you never get to hear about that, and that struck me as wrong. So the frustration grew, and cutting a long story short, I approached the editor of that magazine, called Graham Birdsall, who sadly passed away in 2003 suddenly, but I approached him and said, look, I've had an idea for the Proof4's, it's not Proof4, it's Proof4's Police Reporting UFO Sightings database, and I said, would you allow me to write an article in your magazine? I'd never written anything, and he said yes. That was a big thrill, and so I wrote the article, launched the database in January 2002 issue of UFO magazine, and it wasn't a flood, but within weeks I was getting credible reports, usually from retired officers who began to tell me their UFO sightings that they'd never told anyone else. And over 11 years of research, I now have over 425 cases involving over 900 police officers. So that's quite a lot.
That is an awful lot. And what do you say to people? I mean, there is still people out there, Gary, as you know, that just say, tinfoil hat time, UFOs don't exist, and what do you say to these people?
Well, I kind of don't blame them for that, because if society, well, put it this way, from the day you're born, other than your parents, you get your information from books, TV, radio, cinema, etc. Now, if all of that media is telling you there is nothing to this subject and we're all lunatics, then you're probably, without even realising it, going to create the impression in your background memory that there's nothing to the subject. And so the media cover-up of the subject is 60 years in the making, and it's proved extremely successful. So I can't really blame the public for that, but once you do start engaging them, all I would ask is that they have an open mind, which is exactly the title of your show. Open your mind, and if you do, you'll soon realise that we're not lunatics. There may well be a fringe proportion, but I would guess that in any hobby of any kind there's going to be a fringe of anything. But it's a small minority. That in 11 years of my open research, very, very few people have contacted me, and I get lots of civilian members of the public contacting me. Very, very few have turned out to be what you call nutters.
Okay, and I know, you know, we talked just before the show, and I know you're not a person to preach to people, but if somebody comes up to you and starts kind of questioning you on this, what's your approach? What approach do you take?
Well, I kind of say what I've just said there, and if you get to the end of that and they've listened, then you can say, well, can I give you a few facts about UFOs? You know, a few pilot cases, you know, a few famous military cases. And what tends to happen is that they're interested, they'll listen to you, but because the mindset is so ingrained that what they do, most typically, you could show them the best evidence there is in the world, and they go, at the end they go, yeah, there must be something out there in space, and it's like they can't accept the actual information that you've given them. I've done this to police officers many a times, detectives on courses, I've shown, because they knew what I did, so I'd show them some evidence, really good evidence, and they go, there must be something out there. And it's like, well, I've just been showing you good evidence. Why aren't you listening to it? Why aren't you adapting your investigative skills to what I've just told you? Put it this way. To me, I always try to present evidence that would stand up in a court of law. That's basically my criteria, evidential. What would stand up in a court of law? And what I mean by that is, if you got done for drunk driving, well, certainly in England, I don't know what it's like in Ireland, but if you got done for drunk driving, they'd do a breath test at the scene where they stopped you, and you blew positive. You then get arrested, you then get taken to a big police station, and they'd say, blow into this big machine, which is called an intoximeter. And basically, that would give you a digital printout saying you're 2.5 times over the limit. So therefore, that creates a piece of documentary evidence, a piece of paper with data on it. Now, I would say that that's good enough to go into court, because that's how you get convicted. Now, what is the difference between a pilot being sent up to chase, a military pilot being sent up to chase a UFO, and all its telemetry data, all its cockpit instrumentation is recorded and is able to be produced in ream and ream of paper, like the intoximeter reading? Is that not exactly the same and should be eligible to be in a court of law?
Well, yeah, if the evidence is there and it's documented, yeah, I don't see why not.
But here's the problem. The media don't report on this kind of evidence. So when the age-old question comes up, show me the evidence, what they really mean is show me the alien body or the spacecraft, which none of us have. It'd be nice if we did, but we don't. So what we always have to do, certainly in the public domain, because there may well be alien bodies, there may well be recovered craft, but that's in the military, that's in the secret world, which I'll never know of. So I have to go by what's in the public domain. So in the public domain, in terms of evidence, we have to rely on what's called the circumstantial evidence case, which, if you go to the court, is just as valid as any other case. And lots of people have been sentenced to murder without the body being found. If you have enough pieces of the jigsaw that it becomes overwhelmingly compelling to a jury that you did it. Now, if we apply exactly the same process to UFOs, and we look at the best evidence in terms of documentary cases, like the 2 F-16s that chased a UFO for 75 minutes over Belgium in 1990. All the telemetry data was checked, rechecked. The top Belgian specialist, a guy called Professor Emil Schweitzer, was brought in, the head of Belgian radar. The civilian brought in to oversee work with the Belgian Air Force. He oversaw it all. There were 7 independent radar facilities, 3 military, 4 civilian, that tracked the object, that was seen visually initially, but not by each of the pilots. It was confirmed all on radar. 75 minutes of the jigsaw pieces, 75-minute dogfight, all of it cockpit instrumentation recorded in one of the F-16s. all the telemetry data, and at one point in that telemetry data in the dogfight, the object made a right-angle turn, and at the point it made that 90-degree turn, do you know how many Gs it pulled?
No.
35 Gs. Do you know what the maximum for stealth is?
I think 19 is the maximum a human body can go to.
No, it's 10 or 11.
Oh, is it? Oh, aye.
So that's something that's 3 times the amount, and it was under control.
Wow.
It was trying to evade 2 F-16s. So that's a piece of incontrovertible evidence, backed up by documentary data, pilot testimony, radar testimony. It's one of the best cases in the world, but you don't get to hear that on the 6 o'clock news, and the question is, why? And the question is, nobody wants you to know that.
Why do we not hear it, Gary? Why are they keeping it quiet?
Well, the real answer, I think, is a combination of things, but the main reason is loss of power. If we take America as the one true superpower, rightly or wrongly, I'm sure China and India might disagree with that, but basically it's the accepted still superpower. Now, America has its fingers into so many pies around the world, selling arms to who and everybody, which supports an industry, I guess, probably with hundreds of thousands of American jobs, families, etc., who need the money. Now, if all of those armament contracts were to be deemed worthless, if Obama was to go onto live TV and say, well, actually, these things are real, we've been tracking them for about 60 years, they don't seem to have any malevolent intent, but we can't get near them, their technology is far beyond us. Wouldn't it render all of those armament contracts as nothing? So is then America that superpower? And I guess it wouldn't be, when you're dealing with a level of technology far superior. If I invented a car that would run on fresh air tomorrow, and that's all we needed, to put fresh air into the engine, and it would work, what's likely to happen is the big oil companies would buy the patent off me, get locked away in a cupboard, I'd get a nice tidy sum of money, get sworn to secrecy, and you'd never ever hear about it. For the simple reason is that if a car ran on fresh air, well, do we really need the fossil fuel industries? And the answer is no. So do they make any profits? The answer is no. Are they then upset? Extremely. You get it in one.
Wow. So you're looking at this as a control point of view, and obviously if they get their hands on crafts and they back engineer the technology. I know the book The Day After Roswell by he's dead now, Lieutenant Colonel Corso. And in the book, he worked in the foreign technology department in the Pentagon. That's right. And they said to him, he said, "What do I do with this?" He said, "Well, give it to our military contractors, and if they can reverse engineer it, they can patent it and call it for themselves." And hence we had a massive leap in technology between the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah.
But so do you think that what we're seeing are outside planetary crafts, but also you reckon that obviously because we have back engineered the technology, we have that technology ourselves?
I'm not an expert in that area, but I believe that we probably have managed to reverse engineer some things. If it's a bit like you get a conundrum, because it's like everybody will, if you use the example of, say, Leonardo da Vinci as one of the greatest minds of humankind, if we were to go back 400 or 500 years and pass him an iPad and say, work that out, he wouldn't have a clue, because the leap in technology would be too far for him to comprehend.
Yeah.
Well, what happens if we recover craft that's clearly 500, 1,000, 100,000 years? We would struggle to make any of it work. Some people speculate that we have reverse engineered things and we have got man-made craft. I suspect that there are some man-made UFOs now that are ultra secret. But the problem is you go into that secret world and unless you're in that world, you'll never have the need to know. But certainly if you accept, as I do, that something crashed at Roswell, because the evidence is there for it in my opinion, what would we do? Well, we would try to reverse engineer it, because whoever did recreate that technology, would become the ultimate power on the earth. Well, the history of mankind is all about, well, I want to be bigger than you. And so America, for example, who came across that technology, they'd want it for themselves. And once they'd mastered it, they probably wouldn't want anybody else to have it. You know, you've only got to look at the way nuclear weapons works now. How comes certain countries are allowed to have nuclear weapons and it's okay, and then other countries want to develop new nuclear weapons and they go, well, you can't have them, you're not part of the team. It gets all very political. So I think power is behind all of this and control. And whoever does or has developed that level of technology is ultimately probably the masters on the earth. But I think in the big scheme of things, we're just very low down on the cog of interstellar space, and I think we're just a little oasis in our little bit of the cosmic neighbourhood.
And if, obviously, there are visitors, if you want to call them that, or there are crafts coming into our airspace, I mean, what's your understanding on who they are, what they want?
Well, again, you're moving into areas that I don't know specifically, but it's a question that people often ask me, and I think that there's a few things that we can deduce about real UFOs, ET as I would call it, over the last 60 years. They certainly do appear to have an active interest in nuclear weapons, nuclear storage facilities, nuclear power plants, basically anything that's nuclear. UFOs have often been sighted near these complexes, and you've got to speculate as to why. Well, it doesn't strike me as odd that the modern era of ufology begins really with the Second World War, major world war involving most countries of the earth, and of course in 1945 we dropped the atom bomb, which on a technological scale must have echoed through space a bit like a volcanologist, you know, monitoring a volcano, and you've just had a tremor. Well, I think that wave went out into space, and I think they thought, oh, these have moved up on the technological evolutionary scale. I think we'll go have a look. Now, do you not think it's a bit of a coincidence that the only place in the entire world to have a nuclear squadron in 1947 was in Roswell? And hey, guess what? They have a crash. Now, do you not find that in all the bars in all the world, that's a big coincidence?
Oh, yeah, big time. Steve?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Gary, if they kind of hover around, if you like, anywhere where there's nuclear activity, the fact that I think we can probably assume, I know you should never assume, but I think in this case we can, that their technology will be far, far greater and years ahead of anything that we might have. Do you reckon that maybe if they are hovering around nuclear facilities, it's not because they're interested in the technology, but maybe they know how dangerous it can be, and if maybe there was ever a chance that we were going to blow this little blue planet to smithereens, that maybe then they may just intervene and stop it, because, as you say, maybe that shockwave in the 1940s was felt in whatever planet they happen to be living on.
You mean to talk about the bad neighbours coming into the neighbourhood?
Well, yeah. I certainly think, from my point of view, the nuclear issue tends to strike me as one where, if they've got that level of technology, they could have taken over the planet many, many years ago if they wanted to, so they clearly don't want to. I suspect that they come here and watch us a bit like we go to the Great Barrier Reef. When we swim with the fishes in the Great Barrier Reef, do we break the coral off? No, that's sacrosanct. Oh, don't disturb the habitat. So I think they really just do what we do, but if an oil tanker was to go and start leaking oil in the near the Great Barrier Reef, there'd be all hoo-ha on Earth, for the simple reason it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, and we wouldn't want to see it get polluted. Now, if you think about nuclear weapons have the potential to absolutely destroy this beautiful planet that we've got, and it strikes me as being really logical in the big scheme of things that if people just surveil us a bit like ants in the garden, and I think the way to look at it is that the Earth is a bit like the Galapagos Islands, the Great Barrier Reef. It's a special place because it's rich in water, diverse life and fauna, and I think that probably in our bit of the cosmic neighbourhood, it's a pretty special place. I don't think it's special galaxy-wise, but I think in our little bit of the galaxy, it is. You know, and so I don't think people want to see it destroyed, put it that way.
Yeah, I definitely have to say that. And it's, I suppose, when we come across indigenous tribes, that we find a tribe in the Amazon or something like that, they don't want to disturb them, or you might find an animal or something. You don't want to disturb them, but you want to study them to find out what's going on. Maybe that's what they're doing to us. And I think there's so much evidence out there. What about the likes of abductions? What do you think about them?
Right. I'm often asked this question. Right. If you was to walk down the high street with a camera, a TV camera and just an audio, and catch people in the street and say, well, do you believe there's life in space? Probably most people now would say, yeah, the amount of stars, the amount of stuff that we know now, yeah, there probably is going to be life. But if you said to somebody just walking up without any preamble, do you believe in alien abduction? They'd probably laugh at you and walk away. And that's because it's a dirty word, because it's too much for people to accept. But if, like me, you know some of the top researchers in the world who've looked at this subject, then there really is a lot of evidence for it. But unfortunately, the media don't show the best evidence. But let me give you an example, a theory that I use as an example about abduction. Okay, are you happy to go with this?
Yes, go ahead, shoot away.
Right, here we go. I call it the 24-legged ant theory, okay?
Okay, yeah, shoot away.
Just stay with me. Right, do you have a garden where you live?
Yes.
In your back garden, do you have a pavement slab?
Steve has, I think.
Yeah.
Alright, let's go to Steve's garden. Steve, have you got a garden slab?
Yes, I do.
Alright, well in your little garden, if you one day turned over your garden slab and you found a colony of 24-legged ants, you'd be probably a bit surprised, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so most ants, I think I was at 8 legs. Well, this colony has got 24-legged ants, and it only exists under your slab in your garden in the entire world. Okay, now eventually you're kind of frustrated, you're kind of puzzled, you tell somebody. So somebody tells the media. So some media guy turns up your door and says, I understand you've got a colony of 24-legged ants. And you go, yeah, okay. So there's then a little story in the paper about your colony. So that then sparks a bit of a frenzy with certain people. The people who study ants go, wow, we've got a 24-legged ant. Wow, well, why comes they've got an extra 16 legs and it's only there? So they descend on you in mass. Now, when they get there, what do? They set up to watch the ants in their natural habitat. But then you'll get some people who'll say, look, we want to know why those ants have developed biology with 24 legs instead of 8. We need to kind of have some dead ants to dissect under a microscope and just see why their anatomy has developed so vastly different. So straight away you've got people watching them who are ant specialists in a live environment. You've got other specialists who want to look at dead ants to dissect them. And then, of course, you have the people who like to have secret collections, whether it be tigers, animals or whatever. But suddenly the world's rarest creature, which turned out to be your 24-legged ant, is then currently on all the TV cameras. So what they do is they go, I want some 24-legged ants for my private collection. So what they do is they employ people to come over your garden fence and in the middle of the night steal some of your 24-legged ants. Now substitute the earth for the 24-legged ants. And that's what abduction's about.
Okay, and obviously there's with this, well, maybe it can be proven, it depends on where the evidence is, but apparently Eisenhower did a deal with the aliens. They had a treaty where that we got their hardware and they got our software, i.e.
What's the treaty?
Well,
you got a piece of paper?
Well, this is it. This is it about the treaty. Now, one of the astronauts...
It's not evidence until you get some high-level person bona fide, not secret, not going on camera protecting his details. It's not really evidence until you get one, a bona fide person coming out of high rank or a senior politician who was there at the time, who was saying, yeah, I was there when that meeting took place, who's willing to go on the record, have all the records checked, and then if there's an agreement, there'll be some kind of paper trail. We've never seen any of that, so we're reliant really on probably second, third-hand testimony, which is not really good evidence, it's hearsay. So you've got to be careful where you're going with that.
Well, one of the things I heard about kind of a police procedure, and the best way to describe it is, say you have a stoplight, a set of traffic lights, and a car's parked there, and then another car comes up beside it, it screeches to a halt and then drives off again. And, you know, people report that to the police, so the police start getting evidence. So they ask people and say, you know, what did you see? And somebody might say, well, yeah, the red car pulled up beside the other car, and somebody might say it's a blue car, and somebody say the guy was a black guy, somebody might say he's a white guy. So you have all these people having different experiences based on what they've seen. Yeah. So it's very, you know, the evidence is very kind of loose, but the one thing they all agree on, so you look at the common denominator.
Is that the car stopped beside the other car?
Exactly. And I think when you have people like that, when you have people who are, they give you evidence on what they've seen, and then you're collaborating that with all the other stuff that you've seen, or you might have 2 or 3 people seeing the one thing.
Then you build up a circumstantial case that creates the circumstantial evidence to say that there really is something going on.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, what about the people that have a deathbed confession?
Right, there was a deathbed virtually a deathbed confession broadcast at the citizens' hearings that recently in Washington. Now, that guy, I don't know his identity yet, but I'm told he sadly doesn't have long to live, and when he does die, then his details will be released. Now, I know people like Richard Dolan who interviewed him, and Richard Dolan will have checked him out, and Richard Dolan is no fool. He's a great historian, he's wrote arguably the best book ever written about the history of the subject, which is UFOs and the National Security State Part 1. Very good speaker, very knowledgeable, so I would trust that he has done his research properly, and when he does die, then his details will be released. And I don't think he would have put him on camera to live media streaming if he wasn't really certain as to who this guy was that he said he was, i.e. that he worked for CIA and whatever, and he had top secret access, blah, blah, blah. I think he will have checked him out thoroughly. So I think a lot of people, and me including, would like to see what comes of that as and when this guy passes away. Because, again, if he's then a bona fide, he is what he says he is, then it adds greater credibility to what he's saying. But what you then need, ideally, is for somebody else who was involved in that process with the Eisenhower Initiative, if that's what you want to call it, to then corroborate him and go on the record. And then you've really got a much stronger case.
Yeah, because there was, I'm trying to remember the astronaut's name. He's a very kind of drolly voice, but he was an astronaut, and he said he went to one of these meetings, and he said they filmed a UFO coming down, landing, and they did what they did, and then it took off down in the dry, I think it's dry sands, is it, out there?
Yeah, White Sands.
White Sands, yeah. And I'm trying to think of I'll find his name for you. But
it's Gordon Cooper.
Gordon Cooper, that's the man, yeah. But again, where's the evidence? I mean, it's hearsay, really, isn't it?
The thing with Gordon Cooper, though, that's more interesting is the fact that what you're relating to, he says he's flying a plane around a base in the desert when a UFO comes into land, and he's got a film crew on, and they film it. And he flies around as this object lands, and senior officers go out to meet the crew of the spaceship. And it sounds ludicrous, but this guy went on to be a top astronaut in the Gemini program, and he's one of the first of the few, as it were, in the American space program. So this guy is an absolute American hero. And he said right until his death that ET is real, and basically most astronauts are sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, and Edgar Mitchell is saying the same.
And he said, I submitted that film that, he says, when he took it out, he said, I looked at a few frames and it was clear as a bell, captured the UFO landing and creatures getting out. And he said, that was sent off to Washington, never saw it again. That's evidence if you get that piece of film, but why should he make it up?
Yeah.
And he certainly didn't do his career any harm, because he went on to be this top astronaut.
Yeah. And do you think that purposely they are releasing the information slowly but surely to people to climatise them to something? Because we know about Werner von Braun saying about the Project Bluebeam and the fake alien invasion to, condition people. And they will use holographic technology, and they will use, their own crafts, their own technology as well, to fool people into thinking. Because we've talked about this on the show before, and the psychology is very straightforward to us anyway. Where, when you have a family of brothers and sisters, there's normally a bit of infighting. But when something challenges the family from outside, they get together to defend the family, which is a normal thing to do. Blood's thicker than water. So,
absolutely,
like Independence Day, the movie, is that, everybody's infighting on planet Earth, and people are kind of getting fed up with all these wars on the planet. So they need something from outside to, rattle the cage. So they'll have this.
Don't you find, though, that's kind of worrying tactic? You're absolutely right. It's a tactic that probably would be used en masse onto the public. And that's quite a frightening scenario for me, for the simple reason is it would strike me that what they want to do is demonise UFOs and aliens that are coming here almost certainly very peacefully, the vast majority, although the abductees would say something completely different. And I think that there are probably more than one species, but I don't know that specifically, but it makes sense. So you've got to put things in perspective. I think it's only a matter of time, certainly probably within the next 2 years, and I've talked to a number of journalists about this, that they're kind of like waiting for the right moment, that they admit that they found microscopic life on Mars. Well, once that happens, that age-old question of is there life out there is answered. And it turns out that it's on a planet next door to us. It doesn't matter if it's microscopic life. If it's life, it's life. And the whole point is that when that happens, for me, it signals the beginning of the end of the secrecy. For the simple reason is that as soon as that's acknowledged that there is life in our solar system on 2 planets, then the odds are that around every star that there are 9 or 10 planets, of which 2 or 3 will be in what's called the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
And then if you extrapolate that over the vastness of just our Milky Way galaxy, you end up with trillions and trillions and trillions. You can't even get your head around the numbers. That's got probably 2 or 3 planets in the solar system. So life is actually teeming out there. Now, here's the question again. People say, the astronomers will go, it takes so many light years. What a load of bunkum. Because, again, it's a very narrow way of thinking. If something has developed 1 million years ahead of Earth time in its evolutionary scale, then that means their technology is 1 million years ahead of us. Well, let's take something a bit closer to home. What if a technology on an ET planet has developed at 1,000 years ahead of us? Well, imagine where we would be now in 1,000 years. Will we still be riding around in petrol-driven cars? I don't think so. Will we be still flying around in jet engine technology in an aircraft? I don't think so. Look where we've just come in 100 years. You can't fathom how fast we have evolved in just 100 years. Where are we going to be in 1,000 years? So, to me, the methods of propulsion and the distances in space are irrelevant if technology is developed ahead of Earth time. It's an absolute joke, and what may sound like science fiction, the old warp drive and all that, is probably as plausible as anything to some species that's developed 1,000 years, 500 years, 1,000 years ahead of us. Space will be overcome without a shadow of a doubt.
I definitely think that would be the case. Maybe not in Ireland, because you obviously don't know Enda Kenny. In 1,000 years' time, we probably still have austerity over here, and then they'll be going, sorry, but, you still have to use your old automobile. The old UFOs, you can't use them. But, no, it's interesting to talk about that, because, the whole thing, we had Dr. Carol Roslin on the show, and she was talking about, Werner von Braun saying the fake alien invasion, and the psychology. I mean, if you look at the psychology on its own, it's basically, maybe what they're planning to do. Now, if you think about it from a financial point of view, that what they do is they say, right, fake alien invasion, we have to get these guys, but guess what? We're going to have to get more tax off you, because we need to build the weapons to kill these bad aliens. So guess what? It's more tax, more money, and,
they will find a way to spin it in the media that they want to build up fear. And people have been saying this for a while, that then it was going to be like Middle Eastern terrorism. Well, they've already done that, the war on terror. And then the next thing after that is a fake alien invasion kind of thing, to get people frightened and united as one.
Yeah.
And you can see that if the world's media, who are really run by just 3 or 4 big corporations, really go down that route, it would have a powerful effect. But I really think that it would just be spin, and they would do it to try to make money. They really would, and to create more weapons of mass destruction, because we have to fight the aliens. But there's no evidence to say that any alien coming here has really threatened us very often. It has happened historically, unfortunately, but we've probably threatened them first, and they've probably just retaliated.
Yeah, well, as I say, Dr. Carol Roslin did work with Werner von Braun, and he did say that would be the last card they would use from a psychological point of view, just to get us, to believe that that's what's going on. But I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve has a few questions from our people on the chat facility there. So, Steve, take it away.
No problem.
Okay, first question, Gary, is from Chris. Chris has a couple of questions, actually, all very good. Question 1, could you ask Gary, does he know, I know I'm going to trip over myself, but I'll read it out as it is. Could you ask Gary, does he know, who knows, what do governments know, or is it just the top military and secret services? Does the British PM and cabinet know, or are temporary politicians kept out of the loop? That's in relation to the whole UFO thing.
It's a good question. Do you want me to answer now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. No, it's a very good question. I think in reality, I would say that probably 99% of parliamentarians in this country don't have a clue about the reality of the subject. They will have never had any kind of major briefing, but I'm sure that 1 or 2 people have had briefings, and I know people who have claimed to have briefed certain politicians. So I think somebody does know something. I really do suspect that all of this doesn't lie with politicians who were only here for a few years. It probably lies deep in civil service, deep in MI5, MI6, and deep in with the Americans who control the subject. And I think that's the reality, is that politicians come and go, civil servants stay, and the military-industrial complex and major organisations probably have got much more of a handle. If you was to put 100% of people in the world, probably only 1 or 2% have any idea about what's going on.
So it's definitely a need-to-know basis. And
absolutely, well, of course it is, and that's why it works so well, because special access programs, which are genuine things, you're put on a secret program to develop this little bit of technology. You don't know what the factory's going down the road, because they've been given other little bit of a piece of technology to work on, and you're all sworn to secrecy. So that way it all gets divided up, compartmentalised, and so nobody has a clue what's going on apart from the people giving out the pieces, of which are very few people in the know.
Yeah, I think we've heard of that before, and it makes perfect sense. Next question: has Gary ever considered that the whole UFO issue, which is no doubt real, is just a distraction for a different ET agenda? Chris finds it confusing that there are so many different type of craft and different type of occupants, usually with different messages.
Well, I suppose it depends on what you accept is evidence when he talks about messages. Like I said earlier, I suspect that we're nothing special other than the fact that this has got loads of water and it's rich in fauna. So I think we're like the Great Barrier Reef, the 24-legged ant scenario when it comes to abductions. I mean, you've got cattle mutilations happening all around the world, animal mutilations, which produce quite a lot of forensic evidence that would stand up in a court of law, i.e. a veterinary report and things like that. There are one or two that have gone on the record, produced real evidence that would stand up in a court of law. You don't get to hear about that. You could argue that whoever's doing the animal mutilations, well, if people try to say, well, it's humans doing that, well, that's kind of ridiculous, because why would you go and steal 500 sheep out of a farmer's field when you could have in the mountains thousands of acres to do? You could mutilate cattle for all you wanted without anybody knowing. So it strikes me as being, it's definitely not man-made, and the technology, no blood, that kind of thing, jaw stripping to the bone, surgical precision. There is obviously some kind of species doing that kind of research. If that's what you want, you could maybe call this other species that do abductions. People talk about the Nordics, the Greys, and whatever. I'm not really a specialist in that area, but it strikes me that if life is teeming in space, which I really do think it is, and we're just a very pretty planet, then we're going to have lots of species, whether you call it space tourism or what, coming to watch us in our habitat. What they get up to, I don't really know, but there are clearly, majority are probably benign, but there will probably be some that are not so benign.
So there's probably some intergalactic travel agent organising ships that will come here and observe. But then again, who's to say it's not?
But you say that. But if we found that there was life on Mars and it was not microscopic and it was like basic reptilian kind of, and there was water there, and do you think that within 100 years we'd have hotels on Mars and we'd be looking at these creatures in the natural habitat in the same way that we go to Kenya on a safari? You've really got to open your mind up here that as soon as life is acknowledged, and it was anything like that, if you had the equivalent of elephants and tigers running around on Mars, some species like that, then we'd be clamouring to get over there if we had the technology to do it. And it will happen in time. So what's the difference if there's another species out there who do have the technology, who knows that the Earth has got thousands and thousands of different varieties of life and fauna? They'd be coming over here like we go to the Great Barrier Reef. They'll be queuing up to get over here. So there's all manner of species coming here, I've no doubt.
Yeah, so I suppose in X amount of years' time, these species of alien that are visiting this planet, they could eventually just decide, we're going to set up home there, and they'd probably categorise us and put us into a zoo, and then people can come and pay and see us in our natural environment.
Well, I suppose that is a logical presumption, in the sense that if the technology is so great, they probably have got weapons of their own, or maybe gone beyond that stage. You'd like to think so, but they probably have got weapons that could render us all pretty silly, and we could be taken over. But they quite clearly, at this moment in time, they've been around a long time, and I don't think that they have an agenda to take over this planet. Who knows? I mean, what do they say about the oceans? They say we know more about the moon and Mars than we do about the oceans. I think they've said that we've kind of investigated less than 2% of the world's oceans. So who knows what's down in the other 98%? And maybe lots of UFOs have been seen going into water, coming out of water. USO reports by military officials, well on the record. So who knows if there are bases here? It would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll continue with the questions. Does Gary believe that Greer, obviously that's Dr. Stephen Greer, has info from Neil Armstrong stating that he saw craft on the moon? And if so, why does Ed Mitchell say there is nothing on the moon? That's from another question from Chris.
I don't know. You get into the realms of people who talk about the Apollo landings and Neil Armstrong, and you've had Buzz Aldrin make contradictory statements that they saw UFO on the way to the moon that would appear to be bona fide, and then he kind of backtracked on that after he'd done it in a documentary and said it was. He wasn't going to say it was a UFO on air, as it were, but he was told that I think it was some kind of booster was 6,000 miles away, so it clearly wasn't that. So there was something travelling with them, but I don't know. I don't know Stephen Greer that well. I met him for the first time at the citizens' hearings. He is a controversial figure. He's a very good speaker, he's very charismatic, but he's a controversial figure within this. He claims, and I don't know this, but he claims to have briefed literally thousands of high-ranking military people, and I would say including members of the royal family, he told me, and others. So, but I'm not going to give those those details, because I don't know for certain that he did. But he basically said at a lecture that he briefed members of the royal family, current royal family, about the reality of UFOs, which I found an extraordinary comment, if true. But, he certainly does appear with the Disclosure Project, which was a brilliant idea, and the 2001 original 2-hour briefing was a great idea, basically of getting high-caliber witness categories, military people, radar people, pilots, to go on the record. That's exactly where I come from. So on that regard, I'm totally in tune with the idea of the Disclosure Programme. Whether he has direct knowledge of the Armstrong story, I don't know. I've never asked him about it. There are various people that say that Armstrong said that there were, and apparently radio hams who were monitoring live before they changed the flick the switch, as it were, to go secret. They basically said, we've got company, because said that we've got company on the side of a crater, a rim, or something like that. Now, there are various people within the space, NASA, who've come and supported that and said that, we do believe that they did see things. But until you get 2 or 3 people to come forward who all corroborate the same thing, and because Neil Armstrong never publicly said anything. Now, apparently, quite a few people, famous people, have spoken to him privately, and he has told them that. But again, until those people come out, and Neil Armstrong came out, which you can't do now, unless Buzz Aldrin comes out now, we're never really going to know, other than probably NASA, and they're not going to admit it because they're they're at the part of the military industrial complex. I really do think NASA are. So it's a very difficult question to answer. I certainly suspect there is I can't tell you what documentary it's in, but there is a very famous clip of the 3 astronauts after they've landed, and it's literally within a day of them landing. Once they've come out of quarantine, or a couple of days after quarantine, they come out for this press conference, and they're all in the suits there, and they look like they're at a funeral. And they're so subdued, and it's almost like they're going to burst into tears. And Neil Armstrong, in particular, his body language is bizarre, because as the first man to land on the moon, he's kind of like expected to be the person who's going to talk the most. And he is almost in tears. He's very stilted, and God knows why he's like that. But it's very bizarre, and what should have been this, whoa, yay, we got there, wow, we're back, we landed, on a hoo-ha and should really been on top of the world, something knocked them for 6. I don't know what it was, but it's quite compelling, the body language.
No, it definitely is. I remember the clip. I did watch the clip, but we don't really want to go down the moon landing conspiracy side for a moment. What we want to focus on is the actual citizens' disclosure, and let's have a talk about that, because that was quite significant what happened in May. Tell us all about that, Gary.
Well, I would have to say that in my 11 years of research and starting to do international lectures and things like that, that it's the best thing I've ever been involved in. Stephen Bassett asked me to go. I'd seen him in Brazil at a conference organised by AJ Javard, Brazilian UFO magazine, major conference in South America, and he asked me would I talk about police officer cases at the citizens' hearing. And basically it was, for the people that don't know, it was a mock congressional hearing at the National Press Club, which is literally, I think, 2 blocks from the White House. A very prestigious place. It's where all the presidents have spoken, where Gorbachev has spoken, where Nelson Mandela has spoken, Reagan, Clinton, they've all been there. And so it's a very prestigious place. And I think the idea that Steve Bassett wanted to kind of, because the American government will not allow any open debate about the best evidence since 1968, the idea was to recreate what would look like a congressional hearing where 40 witnesses, probably about 20 top researchers and 20 top witnesses, military, pilots, etc., people who'd work in nuclear facilities, gave evidence before a former senator who actually ran for the presidency in 2008 called Mike Gravel, and then 5 other former congressmen and women. Collectively they had 80 years of public office between them. So very distinguished people. It was run like a congressional hearing in the sense that they're the panel, and then you had like a courtroom situation where you kind of like have the judges at the front, and then you have people giving testimony like in a witness box, and various panels, and it ran from 9 in the morning till 5 at night, Monday to Friday, and it was fantastic. And pilots, military people, I gave evidence on behalf of police officers worldwide. It was brilliant, and I did a major in-depth piece, reported on it in the magazine that I've just launched, UFO Truth magazine, and so that's the lead article in there. That's a magazine you can pick up for free now. Download it. First issue, 96 pages. Go have a look at it. But what I'm saying is, it was a fantastic event. It wasn't widely reported in the media, unfortunately, the mainstream media, although by the end of it, the New York Times gave a largely positive piece, which I'm not an expert on American newspapers, but all the Americans were really impressed with. They said that's a major breakthrough, that you've got your New York Times reporting seriously on it, and a positive article. The bottom line of it that came out of it is that there was a mandate signed, a motion, that the UFO subject should be brought before the United Nations. And basically, the last time the United Nations debated UFOs was in 1979, when the very small country of Grenada, you think of the Clint Eastwood film, that's Grenada, basically their President Gary, the then president, brought a motion to discuss UFOs because he was a very enthusiastic believer. And basically that motion got put on hold. Now what it will take to be triggered to resurrect a full debate at the United Nations is if a country, only needs to be one, signs a mandate that says, yeah, we want to have a debate in the United Nations again. Now, what's hopefully going to happen as a result of these citizens' hearings, and because they were successful, in my opinion very successful, that hopefully probably one of the South American countries, Brazil, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, one of those kind of countries, Mexico, will come forward and put a proposal for a proper world debate about the best evidence from the likes of pilots, astronauts, cosmonauts, air traffic controllers, police officers, etc. A full, open debate in the United Nations. That's what we're seeking, basically, and fingers crossed that that might happen.
How close are you in getting that?
I'm not the best person to speak to. You'd need to talk to Steve Bassett, because he's the one that organised the citizens' hearing, and he's the one that got the politicians to sign the mandate, and he's working towards it. Now, quite what advancement he's had since they finished on May the 2nd, I don't know. I mean, he keeps putting updates out, but as yet no major breakthrough, but I don't know. I might be doing him a disservice. I know well that Steve will be working very hard to bring this to fruition. And believe me, if we could have one country anywhere in the world propose this motion and resurrect that 1979 clause, then we're in business. And I would hope to be involved in giving evidence about police officers, etc., showing the best evidence. But if we did get a UN debate, I think the mainstream media would then have to acknowledge it, and then we're really into a different ballpark there, because you'd make that crossover into mainstream, because this was the UN, and you wouldn't be able to control it, because certainly if you go to the likes of South America, a lot of their governments are openly working with ufologists together on committees to try to fathom out what's going on. They accept that ET is real. They've presented Air Force studies that conclude this is ET, but you just don't get to hear about it. So there's a completely different attitude in South America, and I suspect that it will be somebody from that ilk, from one of those South American countries that will, if they are going to propose it, it'll come from there. But I do think that it could well be a game changer if they do, because I think the media would have to listen then. I
reckon Steve should go down to Ecuador and speak to the president of Ecuador, because they're not really happy with the US at the moment, after stopping one of the trade sanctions. So I reckon you probably have a chance there.
Well, there's this the Snowden thing, and the thing with the Snowden thing is interesting, because if he turns out to be a spy in the accepted kind of Cold War sense, and he's selling military secrets for money, then he should go to prison for espionage. But if he's doing it as a whistleblower for humanity, and saying that things are going on that are, in his opinion, are morally wrong, then I would argue that he's, should be praised. But who knows? Clearly he's got some secrets, and clearly the Americans are very, very nervous of what he might come out with. And who knows what else he has. And I would say, what if he's got questions about UFO reality? What if that's one of his cards? I can well understand why the Americans are so keen to get hold of him, put it that way.
Definitely, if he has some information. The other thing that I was going to touch base on, now, there was a question there Steve had, actually, before we go off that next subject. Steve, you had a question there regarding the ex-defence Canadian minister. Yeah. Steve, you got...
that question came in from John on the MSI chat. John was wondering, what does Gary think of this that's obviously Honourable, Paul Hellyer, Minister of National Defence, testified knowing of 4 alien races actively visiting Earth?
I think he's in his mid-80s. But what you've got to first look at is his political background. And he was the former, if I'm not mistaken, he was the former Canadian Defence Minister, and at one time also the former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. So he's somebody of extremely high political office, and certainly someone whose voice would normally be heard and taken as read. Now, I think it was about 10 years ago, he suddenly went public and made this quote that he said basically that UFOs are as real as planes flying in the sky. And because of his political office and experience, it went all around the world. Now, since then, he has said that, I don't think it's based on his own sightings, it's based on the fact that he's talked to a lot of military people in Canada, etc., who've confirmed to him that UFOs are real as in ET. So I think that's where the line has gone down. Now, you could argue at the citizens' hearings when he concluded by reading from his book, which contained a quote from somebody who people would say maybe a questionable contactee, that he was, when he starts quoting about races as if it's like he knows for certain, then that maybe stretches the credibility or not. But certainly he is a very credible person because of his political background. I don't think he really should have said the comments in his summing up that he did do at the citizens' hearings, for the simple reason is that's not what it was about. work. It was about presenting evidence, and he wasn't at the end when he was summing up about contact with alien races. It was really supposition, and it was based on somebody else's alleged beliefs. So I don't think that was a really good move. But I met him. He's a very eminent person. You you think of the Deputy Prime Minister of any country. You don't get to that office unless you're a high office if you're a fool.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you're Prime Minister, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Okay, we got a few more questions coming in there, Steve.
We have a load more questions.
Okay, we're going to be just cautious of time there. We might have to quick fire them at Gary, and Gary give us a one-line answer,
Yeah, this is just one from myself, Gary. In relating to sightings of UFO craft, do you reckon that there's more up there going on that we can actually see, more, say, craft that are within our visible light spectrum? Because I know we can't see certain gamma rays, X-rays and stuff like that, and I wonder, like, the craft that we see, are we seeing them because we're supposed to see them? Do you know what I mean? Because I reckon if these have technologies far beyond ours, then they could easily fly around in craft, and they could be travelling, in infrared, and we wouldn't see them.
Or cloaked.
Yeah.
Right, a quick couple of quick things there. Two, I think, yes, there are things flying around that we can see. A lot of people will say that they get a strange sensation, they go outside and they see something, so some people get a kind of a hidden message. It's never happened to me. But the other thing is as well that I'm getting quite a fan of night vision, and I think that because we can't see things in our own spectrum through our eyes, night vision's good, and people are getting some fantastic clips of objects whizzing around the sky, multiple objects travelling in groups of 8 to 10 little spheres, changing position, making right angle turns, reverses. Now our planes can't do that. Quite what they are, we don't know for certain, but there's certainly things that I think under night vision conditions that you're seeing that point towards something that's not made here.
And I'll just say to our listeners that if you want to see this, go onto YouTube and type in night vision UFOs, and you'll actually see the footage being shot. Special grade 3 military glasses, night vision glasses. They're around $2,000 or $3,000 to buy, but
you can get cheaper. You can get. I got a pair of night vision binoculars for 360 quid. They're not Generation 3, which are illegal in this country. Why, I don't know. But they do the job good, and they've got a video out facility so you can record what you see onto your laptop or whatever. And I got a clip the first time I used it of 2 objects stacked in the sky, moving without any navigation lights. I know what planes are. I used to be in the Air Force. They don't travel like that, directly on top of each other. A 4-minute sequence. Great. No navigation lights, no noise, seen at about 5,000 to 10,000 feet, so not satellites. So I just think that is a way of seeing beyond our ordinary spectrum. And certainly if you there is a section in the magazine, though, I'll be doing a regular section on the best of the night vision clips.
Excellent, Steve.
Yes. Just a comment in from Jim. Jim reckons that various various radio interviews that he has listened to, as well as different articles, it's stating that we already have, obviously not, it's not us, it's, we as a race already have bases set up on Mars. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, if you listen to Gary McKinnon, who the US wanted to extradite and then dropped when it was obvious that his defence would be, well, I'm just a whistleblower and I'm trying to find out about UFOs, and it would have meant that he would have had to have a big debate in open court, and lots of experts would have gone to his aid to say, well, look, actually there is evidence. That's why it never went to court. It had nothing to do with political wills. It was because the Americans realised that they would have had to open up a debate, and they don't want a debate. But if Gary McKinnon was right in saying that he saw when he hacked into American computers that there was an off-world list of officers, well, who knows what that means, but, it points to something if that was genuine.
Definitely.
Yeah, I suppose, but we can't
argue.
But
you're talking in areas where we don't have a need to know, and that's the problem with, you have the secret world and you have the public domain. And I like to work in the public domain because that's all I'm ever going to get access to.
But do you feel, Gary, that you could be, in all honesty, and I don't mean anything by this, and everybody else involved, that you are being psychologically being manipulated to do what you're doing for the reason to get people adjusted to this to allow for something bigger to happen?
Well, if it is, it's good because I'm not aware of anything. But then again, if it was good, I wouldn't know, would I? I'm not aware of anything like that. Why? The only thing that I would say, which is a bit bizarre, is that if somebody had said to me 15 years ago that you'd go on TV, that you'd talk at the National Press Club next to the White House, that you'd be meeting former senators, and I'd have laughed at them. But something has got me into this in the sense of something compels me. Why have I launched a magazine? I've just retired from the police. I could be taking it easy. But I've had to take a hard route because something drives me forward to say I want to show the public out there the best evidence. So how can I do that? Well, I'll launch my own magazine. UFO Truth magazine just started. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working harder than ever because I want this to be a success and I want people to realise that there really is a lot to this subject and it's not the stuff of Looney Tunes.
Well, we put it down to what myself and Steve say. It's that we do what we do and we don't get paid for this, but down to our moral conscience, that we feel we have to do it, that we're driven.
Something compels you to do it.
Yeah.
And something's compelling me to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, we call it our moral conscience. You know, we have a conscience to wake people up to what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, yeah.
You know, and that's what we do. And that kind of drives us and gives us the energy to do it. They are fantastic at psychology and they do have technology way beyond what we know. So this is my only concern, that we had Barry Trower on, we interviewed Barry Trower a couple of times on the show, and he's a microwave warfare expert in the UK. You probably know Barry, I don't know whether you've heard
I've never met him, no.
Right, Barry, very, very good guy, very great gentleman, very nice, but he's an expert in this. He was trained by the UK government, and he said, look, these guys can get into your head and they can, get you to do things that you would not normally do. And he said that's why people have done something and then they've kind of woken up and goes, I don't remember doing that. Patsies and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, the Manchurian kind of candidate. I can see where that comes from. But going back to whether that's happened to me, I've no knowledge of that. Maybe when I saw something at 15, some subliminal message was sent to me. I don't know. I'm not aware of anything, put that one.
Okay. Steve?
Yes, just another comment from Jim. Jim reckons they have been terraforming Mars since the 70s, according to some, and they are destroying all life on Earth with geoengineering and chemtrails. Maybe there is a link.
I don't really follow the chemtrails thing because I've got too many other things that I follow and are doing, so I'm not an expert at chemtrails, although I've seen some fascinating clips on YouTube. Don't really know enough about it to talk that much. Terraforming, where's the evidence, I would say? If I look at things through evidence in a court of law, then show me the pieces of paper that prove it through documentary evidence. How many people have actually gone on the record publicly and put their name to it? There's lots of people who claim to have worked here, claim to on that, but, they're usually hidden behind screens and it's Mr. X. Well, I'm not a big fan of Mr. X as such, although with police officers, a lot of them don't want to go on the record, i.e. give the name out, but the point is, I will protect their source as long as I've checked them out and they are who they say they are. And that's the key thing. So, there are circumstances where you protect your source. But I think when people are going to make what would be considered really fantastic claims like terraforming, then it takes a big leap of faith to accept that unless you've got some kind of paper trail or some credible series of people going on the record publicly.
Yeah.
I think, we seen some videos a while ago there of the Mr. X interviews, and it's you have to kind of take that with a pinch of salt. I wouldn't be a great fan of Mr. X. I'd be more of a fan of Mr. T. If Mr. T came out and said it, you'd believe it. You'd be afraid of him. But does Gary have any info on the flying rods that a lot of people have filmed recently?
Well, I think I'm not a big expert on rods, but I'm fascinated by rods. And believe it or not, because my eyes are quite attuned to seeing streaks across film, etc. I've actually captured 2 or 3 rod sequences in mainstream TV programs. There's a very good rod sequence in one of the Billy Connolly shows where he's out in America, and you're watching the camera pan up to an open window of what was a brothel in one of these little backwoods kind of American state towns, and something flies across the screen really fast, but when you do it frame by frame, it's a rod that's like an arrow about 12 inches long, and it's got protrusions, and it's really weird, and it's definitely there. I've seen that on a news clip, captured rods. So that I do believe, I don't know what they are, I'm not saying they're ET at all, I don't know what they are, but I do believe that our eyes aren't that fast at picking things up and can be deceived, and I think that there are clearly objects that are whizzing round in the sky, probably that our eyes just don't register, and so we don't see them unless they're apt to be captured on film and you can slow it down. So what it is, I don't know, but I do think that it's a real phenomenon, but I don't know what it is.
I think I don't know whether you heard about or seen the clip with Max Kaiser, the Max Kaiser clip with the his lady friend. Do you know her name?
No.
I don't know this Max Kaiser that you're talking about.
Okay, Max Kaiser is on Russia Today. He's a financial expert, and he's very straight as to what is going on. Hang the bankers type of thing. He's a good guy. We've had him on the show, but one of his daily shows on Russia Today, he was talking with the lady that's with him is his wife anyway. And the two of them are talking about the financial stuff, and they're located down in London. You can see the London skyscraper behind them. And on one of these shows, you see something flying right across the window.
Yeah.
And that was quite interesting, because his show has nothing got to do with that whatsoever. But it's just so, you just see it flying straight across. So
if your eyes are attuned, you can see things, and I've come across things probably 3 or 4 times now. And I've gone back and thought, oh, what's that? And I've watched, and I've played it frame by frame, and what you can only describe as arrows go whizzing through the screen, and you can track them going across the screen, so it's definitely there. It's not just like a blip, an error on one frame. It's something has really flown past, and it's quite bizarre, but I don't think they're ET, put it that way. I don't rule out that it could be some kind of unknown species of insect or whatever that they just fly that fast. We don't have the capacity to see them. I think that's the only explanation, really, that there's something to it. Put it that way.
Well, this was something big. I'll send you over the link. The lady's name, thanks Howie and Snowflake, Stacey Herbert, and she's married to Max Kaiser. And I'll send you over the link, and you can have a look, and you judge for yourself. It's not a rod, but it's definitely something that flew past the window. So I'll send you over the link. But we have about 5 minutes or so left, Gary.
Yeah.
Before I send you over to Steve, and Steve will go through all your bits and pieces, is there anything else that the one thing I was going to actually just touch base on and ask you whether you know anything about it is the Iron Mountain report?
I don't know a lot about that. I mean, what aspect do you want to talk about?
Well, the whole idea, again, that they're psychologically adjusting us into this kind of fake alien invasion thing. And I hate to, it sounds like fantasy, but when you have people like Werner von Braun saying it to Dr. Carol Roslin, and you can see the psychology behind it, and you have movies like Independence Day to get us conditioned to believe that aliens are bad, and all these movies is all part of Hollywood conditioning. You can understand why again, the Hegelian principle and the dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. So they say, oh yeah, these are aliens, they're very dangerous. And people are saying, what are you going to do about it? And say, hey, give us your taxes and we'll invent machines that will shoot these nasty aliens down. I mean, that's basically the psychology. But
I think from the 50s onwards, there have been psychological studies that have all concluded, generally, that it's probably going to be, whenever that contact comes, officially, it's going to be very profound and potentially very dangerous for the human race, because if you go back to the conquistador principle that greater civilization usually wipes out minor civilization, as what happened with the Spanish and the American South American tribes. So, there is certainly some fear factor there, and yes, it could be exploited for political gain. But the political gain would be only to make money, and that's what it would be about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the plan. This is why Dr. Carol Rosin doesn't want the weaponization of space. She's trying to get...
shouldn't be, because we don't own space, and I think this whole principle that mankind is quite arrogant, and for many people believe that we are the only sentient beings in the universe. Even now, mainstream science is still hanging on to that belief that we're the only ones, and we've not confirmed anywhere else. Well, mainstream science is every day is making breakthroughs on the amount of exoplanets being found. I think there's about 1,000 exoplanets being found now. These in the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, probably teeming with life. So it's only a question of time, but I think it's a silly way to look at it. Contact's going to come. What the implications are, I don't know. I don't think it would be as much to fear as what the psychological studies of yesteryear forecast, because I kind of think that most younger people now are open to the idea that life is teeming in space and it's going to happen sooner or later. And I don't think it would create economic crisis. I don't think all wars would stop on Earth, which is the inference with Reagan and Gorbachev. I sometimes wonder what would happen if we faced a common threat. We'd all unite together, which was what they both said in the late 80s. I think we've gone beyond that. Maybe in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was reason to keep things secret, but I think now we can handle it, and I really don't think that their agenda, ET agenda, is one to take over the human race. They could have done it a long time ago if they'd wanted to.
I think what they've been waiting on as part of our conditioning, are waking us up to the introduction that there is something outside and apart from us, is the consciousness of the planet, where I read has to reach about 80% for them to turn around and say, well, listen, because when people accept the fact, when you say somebody now, do you think there's life outside the planet? And most people go, yeah, of course there is. We'd be silly not to think. When people are at that level, it means that society and mankind won't just, fall into a big ball of confusion.
Yeah, you can't be controlled when you reach a crossover point.
Yeah. Exactly. So basically, I think that's the level of consciousness that we need to hit on the planet, and we're getting there now. I think it depends on who's going to release the information first. But I'm going to pass you over. We have just a couple of minutes, so we're going to have a quick fire questions from Steve, and then we'll do a roundup.
Yeah.
Okay. One came in there a while ago, Gary, from Saul. Saul was just wondering, what's your take on crop circles?
It's definitely part of the umbrella of ufology. 95% of all crop circles are man-made, but there is a hardcore 5% that aren't, and it's definitely under the umbrella, like mutilations, animal mutilations. You look at implants, etc. It's all part of the umbrella.
Okay.
Something to it, yeah.
Yeah. And we just have two comments now, and obviously we'll be interested in your take on these comments. One is from Eric. Eric says, I think the alien stories are to distract us from real political crimes and social corrosion, but a lot of bored people love wasting other people's time with this for some reason.
I would suggest he's never looked really at the evidence, and he's probably got a closed, narrow mind.
Okay. And Chris says, I respect Gary and I admire his work. However, I have come to the conclusion that a lot of people involved in the disclosure process are disinfo. The powers that be will never tell the truth, and if the ETs had our best interest at heart, they would not be engaging in contact with our controller.
Maybe he's right. I don't know. Maybe it's one valid opinion. I don't. The people I respect as researchers, people like Stanton Friedman, people like Peter Davenport, Peter Robbins, they're very eminent people, and they're not out to deceive people, to spread disinformation, in my opinion. But everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
That's it. And I do think you have to look at the evidence. And even if you you do a Stanton Friedman approach to it, and let's just take even 5%. I mean, you don't have to prove all of them. You just have to prove one of them.
Absolutely. And the general consensus of 95% of everything turns out to be mundane explanation, atmospherics, misidentification. You're then left with a hardcore of 5%. After investigation, you're left with 3% that stand up to all scrutiny after investigation, and they're the best reports from the likes of pilots, astronauts, cosmonauts, radar operators, police officers, etc., etc. High caliber witnesses, they stand up to scrutiny the vast majority of cases, and you're left with this 3% hardcore. Well, 3% of 1,000, that's 30 cases.
Yeah, exactly, and you just have to prove one. And they have one good quality. All right, Gary. Well, listen, we've hit that time. Thanks very much for coming on. Fantastic information, and brilliant information. And I think maybe in a few months' time we'll get you on again and get an update of how things are going. I'm going to that'd be brilliant if we can do that. I'm going to pass you over to Steve, and Steve will get all your details there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've enjoyed the show. Anytime you want me, just contact me and we'll sort something out.
Brilliant.
Excellent. We can't ask for more than that. Gary, while you're there, can you maybe mention the magazine again and give out website details or where people can find more information, please?
Right. All you have to do is put into Google or main search engine, whichever you use, UFO Truth Magazine. It's actually www.ufotruthmagazine.com. But you should find it just under UFO Truth Magazine. You'll get it under my name as well. Just put my name and it'll take you straight to it. It's a 96-page colour bi-monthly online. So only available online for your iPads, etc. And the first issue is free, and then thereafter it's £4 an issue, or currency equivalent. And there's an important thing that I meant to say that we didn't mention during the show, is that as of the 25th of June, when the magazine launched, the website's all ready. You can download it for free. But on that same day, 25th of June, I created the United Kingdom UFO Reporting Centre, which is for any sightings from now on. Report it to there. There's an online form on the website, detailed online sighting report form. So think about that. Tell your friends, and go check out the website.
Fantastic. And I do recommend going over to your website, the Proof website, because there's some great information there. Steve?
I think we're going to have to get a pair of those glasses. I mean, 300, I think Gary said they're 300 and something £. That sounds very good, so you can connect it up to the computer.
If you send me an email, I'll give you the link to what they are. I shouldn't really be doing advertising, should I? But yeah, it cost me £368 and they're very good. They can link up, got a video out facility, and I've already seen 7 or 8 sequences that I can't explain, don't know exactly what they are, but they're very bizarre.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's brilliant, Gary. Okay, we're going to go to a piece of music and stay with us there for a minute, Gary. We'll be back after this.
Communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Okay, yourself, a bit of John Farnham. You are that voice. Nice piece of music there for the interlude.
Brilliant information from Gary, and I have to respect Gary because he is a detective constable and he only deals with evidence. He only wants proof, and that's what he works on. He doesn't do the pie in the sky stuff, which is what I respect him for, because at the end of the day...
Thank God I didn't play that song.
Pie in the sky.
Or what? Eye in the sky.
Eye in the sky.
Yeah.
I didn't actually talk to him about Travis Walton. Maybe we'll try and get Travis Walton on the show sometime. That'd be interesting.
Get John Boy as well.
I know
all the Waltons.
Yeah, all the Waltons on. Since we're on Walton's Mountain anyway.
Yeah.
I know there's a few people are kind of saying, well, what's that in relevance to the point that there's evictions and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, this is a big jigsaw. And it's all interlinked. Whether you see the connections or not, it's all interlinked. It's all part and parcel of it. And this is why I open your mind. We look at all different areas, because there is a link in the jigsaw puzzle. It's there somewhere. and you just have to connect the dots. So that's why we do this. That's why Open Your Mind covers so many different areas, because it is a massive jigsaw and they're all linked. Whether you see it or not is irrelevant. It's there and there is a link to it. Now, just a couple of things, a couple of emails that we got in during the week. From one listener sent in an email, and there was a person that actually came along to the seminar that we did regarding the dangers of wireless technology. And they sent us an email after the seminar and said, you know, you sound younger and slimmer, but when I saw you, the both of you, you're obviously older and a bit rounder.
Well, thank you for noticing.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's better to say there you are than where are you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we sound younger and slimmer.
And obviously well kept, apparently.
Yeah.
Well kept.
I tell you, whoever that was, I got some shock.
There's a few people who've actually said to us that they hear us talking on the radio, and then when they immediately think, God, I didn't think you were old. We thought you were young guys.
We're not old, we're experienced.
Experienced. Yeah.
I mean, who wants to hear some 18-year-old telling about the ways of the world and all the solutions and this, that and the other? You wouldn't believe them. You'd say to them, you're 18, you know nothing about the world, you haven't lived, you've no experience. I mean, okay, we're a little bit past 18.
A little bit past.
So we've experienced a little bit more, I suppose. But then again, if we had someone on who's in their 60s telling us, or even their 50s telling us about stuff, we would respect their opinion, because we say, well, they've lived for longer than we have.
Exactly. Now, the other email that we got in during the week was one of the chaps, this chap asked us, he just said, the show was really, really good, except for the talking at the start and talking at the end. And can we elongate the actual amount of time the guest is on the show? Well, unfortunately, that's our format. That's the way we have been running OYM, and because there's news that comes in that we like to talk about and get it out there and inform our listeners. So that's just the way it is, I'm afraid. But if you listen to the podcast, you can always fast forward if you don't like that bit and you go straight to the guest. So there's no problem there. Right, next week, on next week's show, we are going to... you hardly talk at the start and end. Yeah, I know. We try and, only talk a little bit and then get the maximum time with the guest.
If I can just say... And I know I did mention this to you when we talked about this, that a lot of some of the things that we mentioned, okay, the car wasn't contact in the desert is one of the exceptions, but a lot of the information that we do kind of give out at the beginning, when we do our little monologue, if you like, it's relating to what's happening in Ireland. And I know we do have a lot of listeners in other countries, but because, say, we're broadcasting, if you like, from Ireland, we have to kind of touch base on what's happening in the country. And I know it's of no interest to people outside of Ireland, but from emails that we have had over the past 3 years of doing the program and the format that we use, it seems to work. A lot of people like it. So for the few who maybe don't get it, all we can do is apologise and say, maybe instead of complaining about it, maybe just download the podcast, fast forward, or maybe tune in about 7:15.
Exactly, but with the information I think is relevant to what's going on. Now, next week we are going to have Drake on, and we're going to be touching base with what Drake thinks is going on, and we'll probably have information regarding about Neil Keenan. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be simulcasting with Blog Talk Radio. This is the plan, because their show starts an hour before us. So we're going to get Drake and Denise on from Blog Talk, and we're going to do the show with them, and then, because they do their show for 3 hours, so when we finish with them, they'll just go off, they'll carry on doing their show. So we're going to combine the two shows next week, but that's the plan, technically, so that's going to be
I can see that running seamlessly.
Yeah, that's going to be a bit of fun. So, and the other thing is, sorry about the OYM player being down, but the problem is that the actual website was down of the people who run the player, and there's nothing we can do. It's just down. It's one of them things. Now, before we finish up, I'm going to give you a nudge, wink, wink. Okay? I didn't really... I was talking to Gary about it before the show, but I didn't mention it on the show. Apparently, Dr. Stephen Greer has been exposed, right? Regarding some information about certain things he was doing. I don't know how true this is. It could be a hoax. But it was mentioned on a particular internet radio show, this lady who's a host, mentioned certain things that apparently Stephen Greer has been involved in. Now, I don't know, this could be hoax, but you need to Google it and check it out yourself. But if it is false, well then, I think that lady needs to apologise to Stephen. If it is true, it kind of knocks the UFO thing, the whole movement, it kind of affects it. But I'm not saying what it is, because I don't know whether it's true. So it's up to you to do your research, check it out, and see what you think yourself. But I only came across it yesterday, so I'm not going to go into detail. Now, Karen from United We Strike. Hello, Karen, listening to the show. The strike is over the 4th of July. They're having a massive strike on United We Strike over the 4th of July. So if you want to go over to unitedwestrike.com, and Karen has loads of information there about United We Strike, who they are, what they do, when the strike is on, and all that information, pop over there and just basically pull away from dealing with corporate companies and try and deal with the local companies, local shops. And again, one of the things I'm looking at is closing down bank accounts. See what we can do. It's going to be difficult, not impossible, just difficult, I think. That's the.
Oh, sorry, you're looking at
that's
me.
That's the plan of attack.
Sorry, okay, this is the bit where you look at me and I kind of, oh yes, I jump in. Sorry, I was miles away.
Yeah.
I was absolutely miles away.
We're still, after 3 years, we're still practicing, obviously.
Yeah, we'll eventually get it right.
Yeah.
No, sorry, there was a comment there from Snowflake. Snowflake was wondering if there was any news on the property tax. Latest we heard in the property tax is that they're going to be sending out some letters to those who didn't pay it, how bold we are. And as regards the information about my employer, I think I spoke about that, where I was told I would be relieved of my duties but rehired again on a, I can never think of the bloody word, consultancy basis.
Consultancy, yeah.
No, I've heard nothing more about that, so that's just, that's kind of still up in the air at the moment. So, if there's any change or if anything happens, you'll all be the first to know. So you as well.
But there's an awful lot going on globally. I know, there's the Malaya, the Malayan government apparently, if I'm right with this, have issued a warrant for George Bush's arrest, and Rumsfeld and Cheney. And so George Bush doesn't want to leave the US, because if he does leave the US, there's a chance they're going to grab him and arrest him for war crimes, and Tony Blair should be on that. So there seems to be an awful lot going on. Now, there's a video that was sent over to me, I'm just watching the time, about foreign troops over in California at the moment. I'm going to have a look at that and see what it is. Seems to be an awful lot going on, but again, if you come across anything, send us the links over, and we'll be more than happy to send them out to our registered users. Don't forget to register. It's free. If you have donations, please, that'd be great. Any donations you have, click on the ads, etc., etc. So, okay, we'll let you go. Vibes on next, and I'm sure it's going to be a very, very good show, as usual. So, for myself, Alan James, take care. Have a safe week. We'll catch you next week.
Okay, and the same for myself, Stephen George. Noticing we've got 6 seconds left, so Billy McGuire is going to be on with Vibe at 9 p.m. So stay tuned, and we'll catch you all again next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Open your mind.